Hello and welcome to this debate between the two candidates for Attorney General, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth. In alphabetical order, let me introduce them to you. The Democratic nominee is former Boston City Councilor Andrea Campbell of Boston, a graduate of Princeton University and UCLA Law School. And the Republican nominee, Attorney Jay McMahon of Bourne, a graduate of the University of Massachusetts and Suffolk University Law School. Candidates, welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here. So just a brief word of explanation about our format. For those of you who haven't seen it before, we'll give each candidate about a minute to answer my questions. Then they're free to engage one another in direct debate. A note to our viewers on Channel 4, this segment is being edited down from close to a half hour due to time constraints, but you can view the entire debate on demand on our website, cbsboston.com. And on that, candidates, let's begin. Andrea, you'll take the first question first. C comes before M, and then we'll take turns going first. In the wake of the Supreme Court decision in June overturning Roe v. Wade, the state legislature passed and Governor Baker signed into law protections for abortion rights, including a ban on cooperation with legal proceedings initiated by more restrictive states and measures expanding access to contraception. However, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that there might be future efforts to limit access to abortion here. So the question is, do you believe there are any reasonable limits on abortion rights? And if so, what are they? 1 minute, please.
I am 100% for women's right to choose. I have been stressing on the campaign trail why folks should care about the Attorney General race, and this is one very reason. The fact that the Supreme Court could take away a constitutional protection, that means other civil rights that we take probably for granted are under threat. And so I actually have proposed establishing a reproductive justice unit within the AG's office to bring together the various bureaus and divisions to make sure that we're not only protecting a woman's right to choose, we're expanding access to reproductive services, particularly in Western Mass, where deserts still exist, and also making sure we're protecting providers and those who will choose to come here for the services given what's happening in our southern states. This is a major role for an AG to play. And this is one major distinction between me and my opponent, who is against a woman's right to choose, against a fundamental right that we've taken for granted, I think, for a long time, and that we should be protecting and fighting for.
Thank you. Jay, 1 minute, same question.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. And let me just say this. The Dobbs decision does not affect a woman's right in Massachusetts, not one iota. That right to choose is already enshrined in the state constitution. The Dobbs case was on the federal constitution. And what the Dobbs decision says was, in the federal constitution, there is not a federally protected civil right to abortion. But on the Massachusetts state constitution, it is enshrined there that a woman has a right to choose. When I become the Attorney General, I'm going to take an oath of office that I'm going to uphold the laws of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the laws thereunder. And the law now is that a woman has a right to choose. So where she said I'm against that, I don't know. It doesn't say it on any of my social media. It's just part of a Democratic playbook where they just say, oh, every Republican is against something. And that's not so.
Rebuttal.
I don't know what playbook he's referencing. I don't operate from a playbook. I talk to people. I engage with residents. The problem is, right now in Massachusetts, a woman does have a right to choose access to abortion, you name it. That is because of the hard-fought work of those in the legislature to pass the Roe Act. As a counselor, I went to the State House to testify with constituents in support of that legislation, so I would continue that leadership. But the threat is, at the national level, you have a Congress that is pushing for a national ban on abortion and on a woman's right to choose. We are going to have to step up in Massachusetts and lead the way, but that is still under threat, and so you need a candidate who is unequivocal in supporting that right, even as the federal government is going backwards and pushing states to go in the opposite direction.
Response.
Okay, well, just what we said earlier. She's talking about something that could happen, might happen. The legislature in Massachusetts is the one who sets the laws. If people want to change the law, they have to lobby the legislature. Our job as an attorney general is not to change the law or pick and choose what laws we're going to enforce. We have to enforce all the laws. If they get changed by the legislature. I'm not seeing that happening in Massachusetts. No matter what, abortion is protected by the Massachusetts state constitution.
Response if you want to, otherwise I'll move
If
on.
that changes at the federal level, and there's, of course, a group of Republicans at the national level looking to ban abortion and access to these critical health care services nationally, I'm going to be an AG that stands up nationally to protect our rights here and to push back against that threat, which is coming from our Republican counterparts. And so you are going to need an AG not to enforce the laws only here in Massachusetts, but to stand up nationally to protect our constitutional rights.
And equal time, if you want it, then I do want to move on.
Just going to say that I intend to impassionately protect every citizen of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for every right that we have constitutional, both federal and state. You will not see me being an activist, a political activist, attorney general who's taken one side or the other. I'm going to dispense with justice in accordance with the law.
Okay, you can, if you wish, later on in the debate, return to any topic that comes up in your free time. But let's move on to another topic, and you'll start first here, Jay. Back in August, Governor Charlie Baker proposed $40 million in new spending on school safety that would fund security upgrades, an anonymous tip line to report possible threats, and emergency response training for child care providers. Do you support or oppose those approaches? And do you have other ideas for further protecting school children? 1 minute, sir.
Well, to some of the shootings that have been in Boston public schools, absolutely, I support any type of security that will help and keep our students safe. But I'm also concerned that we have some of our liberal elitists on Beacon Hill that want to throw the police out of the public schools. I think the police need to be there. I think the presence of the police in public schools protects not only the students, but also the teachers from students who have gotten out of control and have seriously beaten up, in some cases, caused principals to go to the hospital. So I'm in favor of putting police into the schools.
Same question, 1 minute, please.
First of all, I'm living with these issues almost every single day. And in the fact that I live in the city of Boston, I live in Mattapan, which is a community that's one of the poorest in the city of Boston. And we are folks who are fighting every single day to make sure our communities are safe and healthy and thriving. And I say we, it is a community effort. We recently had the 14-year-old killed. The Burke High School, where my twin brother, who is sadly, of course, passed away, used to attend high school. That shooting there is tragic. So there is a lot an Attorney General's office can do, one, to enforce our gun laws, but at the same time, investing organizations and folks on the ground who are breaking these cycles of trauma and violence every single day through all types of grant initiatives, which I think the office should expand upon. That's my focus. It's not just holding folks accountable for these incidents. It's also making sure we're breaking these cycles so crime goes down permanently in communities of color, in our gateway communities, and other places where it's prone to happen.
Rebuttal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Mattapan is a troubled area, and the reason why it's troubled is because it doesn't have enough police. Now, my opponent would defund the police and degrade the police, and the community leaders, not only in Mattapan, but throughout Boston, and indeed throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, are begging for more law enforcement, not less. If we had her way, the cops would be defunded, and that would be a grave effect on public safety. The city of Boston right now are down 400 cops. Some cops are working 24 hours a day. And because of that, we have to end this notion of defunding the police and encourage and support the police.
Equal time.
I'm going to push back on this notion that I live in a troubled neighborhood, and I've heard my Republican opponent use that language to describe cities or urban areas. It's ridiculous. I live in a community where you have folks working 2 or 3 jobs to make sure their families are cared for and that the next generation does better than the last. And it is truly a community effort. I would just stress, I'm the only candidate on this couch to have worked actually with the legislature, including our current governor across the aisle, to bring in resources into our police department in Boston to improve community policing efforts. I believe, yes, make sure our departments are well funded, and I frankly think Boston is. Other municipalities, maybe not so much, especially as they have to comply with post requirements and other things. But at the same time, I also believe in transparency and accountability. And I have a record of delivering on creating apparatuses to ensure that, and would do that as the next Attorney General.
Go ahead.
When we have people being shot in Boston almost every night, the place is starting to turn into Chicago. It's because because of an attitude and an animus against the police. The police are not having any respect. They're trying to cut their budget. They wanted to end the crime unit, the gang unit on the Boston Police Department. When you've got that situation coming from community leaders, they are in essence encouraging crime in their neighborhoods, and that is happening here in Boston. Everybody knows there's a crime wave, and it's getting worse. And until we have an Attorney General who's going to stand up and support the police, we're going to have the same problems they have in Mattapan and all over the entire city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
One, I will be an Attorney General that, of course, works in partnership with police, and I'm supported by many, including chiefs and commissioners I used to work with as the chair of the Committee on Public Safety for the City of Boston for 6 years, working to bring in body cameras, working with unions, police officers, community activists to be able to do that, creating the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, which exists in the City of Boston. It is historic, working with all of those stakeholders to deliver that, bringing in resources from state government to make sure the department was well-funded and well-resourced. But I want to push back on the stereotypes and the narrative. I live in the city of Boston. You do not. I every day have to experience that trauma of a 14-year-old or another young person being shot and killed. This is personal for me. I've lost folks to the various systems, including my twin brother who died while in the custody of the Department of Correction when he was only 29. I've always been about breaking these cycles of poverty and violence and trauma. Would do the same as Attorney General. It's about accountability, but it's breaking these cycles, which is the harder work, which I'm absolutely dedicated to doing.
Briefly, please.
Ma'am, you have been in association with a group called FTP. The F is the F word, T is the, and it's police, so it's F the police. Are you still in association with those people?
I'm not sure what he's referencing in terms of association. I'm not sure when he says those people. What I am in partnership with is with stakeholders of all different stripes, including Republicans, those who are for transparency and accountability, the ACLU, the NAACP, police officers, in order to have delivered on body cameras, this Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, delivered real solutions to create well-funded departments and at the same time hold them accountable and push for transparency and accountability. You have to engage everyone. And I've done that really well, while also making sure law enforcement is respected, and at the same time, the community has their voices heard when it comes to accountability and transparency, which is what we still need to do because no department is perfect.
I'll have to break, but I'll give you each 15 more seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, ma'am. So the FTP, the F the police that you were associated with.
I'm not associated with FTP.
When we talk about those police, are we talking about police like Sean Gannon from the Yarmouth Police Department, Mike Chesner of the Weymouth Police Department, or these two officers that got killed in Bristol, Connecticut? Are those the people that you want to F the police?
First of all, I find it extremely offensive that he's suggesting that I am anti-police. It's ridiculous. And it's a narrative that, frankly, gets into the way of progress. On the one hand, we do have departments where you see incidents of misappropriation of funds. You see over-policing in communities of color. These are things that police officers themselves want to address. The next AG is going to have to roll up her sleeves to deliver on that, not use rhetoric, not divide, but really get things done. And I've done that as a counselor, and I'll do it as the next AG.
If a resurgence of COVID or a future pandemic should once again raise the prospect of vaccine mandates for public employees like first responders who interact closely with the public, would you stand by while government imposes those or push back in court? 1 minute.
I think, one, it's a conversation that we should have when we get there. Right now, obviously, we want to make sure we're being smart and following the science. I was just at a senior event with hundreds of seniors. I was wearing my mask. I know it was optional there. And so we're currently following various protocols to keep people safe. If there is a surge, I think we need to revisit the possibility of making sure that folks get vaccines and are wearing masks in order to protect the public. But we're not there yet. And I will tell you, most folks are enjoying coming out of some sense of social isolation and frankly more concerned about the economy and mental health than maybe a mandate issue.
Mr. McMahon, 1 minute.
Well, look, there's nothing in the constitutions, both the federal and state, that permit government to interfere with our civil rights when it comes to these vax mandates. There's no authority in the Constitution for these vax mandates. And to shut down the economy like we did here in Massachusetts was just horrendous. I come from Cape Cod, and down there we have seasonal businesses, and the way they shut down, the government shut down the economy, they might as well put banners on both bridges and say, close for business, see you in the bankruptcy court, because that's what literally happened to businesses down on Cape Cod. So I am against these forced mandates, and I would certainly stand with each and every employee, with union members, with police officers and first responders who, before we had the vaccines, they were heroes. Now all of a sudden they're getting fired because they're not taking some kind of vaccine when the pandemic is over. It's crazy, and I'm going to stand with those employees and make sure they get their jobs back and get their money back as far as back pay.
Thank you. 1 minute rebuttal.
I will focus on the economy. One thing we agree upon, based on what my opponent just said, is folks coming out of this pandemic are concerned about the cost of living. They're concerned about whether or not they're going to be able to afford all types of goods, including prescription drugs that are going up in cost. They're concerned about wages. So I think actually the next AG is going to have to quickly get in there and look at ways in which to build wealth and economic prosperity for residents, not just in the city of Boston, but frankly in those communities that feel left out and left behind. And I think that is really what will be at the top of the set of priorities the next AG is going to have to look at.
Response, if you want it.
Look, government, this was huge overreach. It was well outside the constitutional bounds. It shut down businesses. The government actually said certain businesses were non-essential. In fact, they closed down churches. Now, these were all against violations of constitutional rights. And yet the government went with that, and it wasn't until it was challenged that some of these places started opening up again. Now, why is it the government had the right to pick certain businesses in certain industries and say, those are essential, you can go there with a mask, but other places, you have to close your doors, lay your employees off, and just pretty much suck it up and go out of business? I'm against that.
I want to move on, but if you want
I would just stress, coming out of this pandemic and the senior event I just referenced, or going out to Western Mass or Berkshire County, was just in the South Coast region last night, residents are concerned about jobs, wages, the pricing of goods. They want economic stability. In addition to that, mental health, a major concern around the uptick in depression, anxiety, including suicide, not just in the context of adults, but young children. So there's a lot that we have to do to prioritize. Those are the sets of issues I would absolutely prioritize as the next AG.
And equal time if you want it.
I don't need it.
Okay.
I want to go to the next question.
All right, excellent. Good choice. Now, just the other day, Boston city workers once again relocated encampments that had returned to the area of Mass and Cass. But Mayor Michelle Wu says, quote, until we are eliminating poverty and the opiate crisis here in Boston, we will continue to see an impact, end quote. So as Attorney General, you will play an important role in dealing with situations like Mass and Cass, which have been linked with crime and denounced by nearby residents and businesses. What new ideas will you bring to this tough problem? 1 minute.
First of all, I went to Mass and Cass. I've met with some of the people there. I've talked to them. I've seen their conditions. I've asked them what would be best to help you. And they said rehabilitation. real rehabilitation, not the government rehabilitation that's a 99% failure, but real rehabilitation where they can get their lives back. The dirty little secret in Massachusetts is the private pay programs work. The government programs don't. Now, she's had this opportunity to address this problem when she was president of this Boston City Council. The matter only got worse. It's no longer methadone mile because it's longer than a mile. It's getting worse. But I have a 3-point program that I would institute as Attorney General that would help these people get real rehabilitation and give them their lives back. If you look at Mass and Cass now, the city and the Beacon Hill, for that matter, might as well have raised a white flag and just surrendered and say, there's no way we're going to help these people because the problem is getting worse. No, it seems like nobody's doing anything other than giving them drug paraphernalia and instruments so that they can continue with intravenous drug use.
Thank you. 1 minute.
This issue is near and dear to me. I grew up on Mass Ave, and we grew up poor and at moments lived in public housing. We never had to deal with needles on the ground or bodies on the ground. You didn't know if the person was dead or alive. That is the state of affairs right now in Mass and Cass. It is tragic. It is sad. As a counselor, did everything I could to change that situation. It is an area where the mayor has to step up, the governor has to step up, and of course an AG. I put out a plan and proposal. Some of that was adopted by our current mayor, including appointing someone to look after directing the response. But where I think an attorney general can show up is a whole host of ways. It is not just a public health crisis. There's a lot the office can do to invest resources to community-based organizations that are delivering intervention and prevention programming. But it's also a public safety crisis. We need law enforcement, we need the district attorney, we need other communities across the state, not just Boston, every municipality, including our suburban communities, to step up and respond, because many of the residents who are struggling also come from outside of the city of Boston. It needs to be holistic. And at the end of the day, this requires folks to stop the drug dealing that is happening there. And every treatment facility and every survivor that I'm speaking to who's in recovery says it cannot just be prevention and public health. It also has to be we're pushing folks to go into recovery as well.
Rebuttal.
You can't resolve the crime if you're going to defund the cops. I've got a little stake in this. In 2008, I lost my son to opiates. It was from injuries he received and when he was in Iraqi freedom. The VA prescribed some opiates to him, and he became an opiate addict. And tragically, it eventually ended his life. I've seen it firsthand. No parent should have to bury their child who has died from drugs. We can end opiate addiction in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the medical capital of the world. We have the know-how, we just don't have the will in City Hall or Beacon Hall to start putting these people and helping them in private pay, rehabilitative type programs. In other words, we need to revamp the state programs into how the success rate of 85% success rate of the private pay programs. That's one of the reasons I'm running for this office, so that the same thing doesn't happen to other parents and other family members. Every family in the Commonwealth has been touched by this opiate scourge, and we have to do something about it other than just watching them die on Mass and Cass.
He began. You get the final word.
I absolutely agree. No family, no parent should bury their loved one from an overdose. I have been crisscrossing this state as far as Berkshire County to talk and have painful conversations with parents who have lost a loved one to an opioid crisis, or others who are still in recovery but who are turning that pain into purpose every day. An AG can step up and take a statewide response and approach, push every municipality to play a role, establish more treatment centers for folks to have accessible services in their community, and at the same time address the public safety aspects of this, which is in Mass and Cass a real issue. You have folks who are driving into this community, selling drugs and driving away. You have human trafficking, sexual assault, so many other things where an AG can play a critical role and must.
Interesting conversation. Candidates, Thank you, but the time has flown by, but our time is up. I want to thank you very much for watching. Now, if you logged on during this debate and you want to watch the whole thing, you can do so on demand on our website, cbsboston.com. Also, please check out our half-hour Voter's Guide special. And after you vote, watch it count on election night right here on TV and on TV 38, where I'll be joining Lisa, David, and the entire WBZ News team for live local coverage starting at 8 on November 8th. For now, it's back to my colleagues for more CBS News Boston.